Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Breakout EDU on-air hangout to discuss game design. So really trying to get people building games for Breakout and learning more about how to bring this concept to your classroom. So I know that some of you never heard of the concept and maybe just kind of stumbling upon the link and tuning in. So I want to give kind of a quick update and description of what we're doing here, and then open up the conversation for discussion, and then showcase some of the resources and things online. So got a few friends down here at the bottom, but also want to open it up to anybody else who may want to jump in and join us. So welcome. I am here in Mountain View, California, at the Google offices. So it's kind of fun. And let me tell you quickly about Breakout. So long story short, there's these things around the world called escape rooms. And I learned about them a few months ago and was playing them and was really struck by just how much they force collaboration, critical thinking, and really help you teach it in a super engaging, immersive way. And so, long story short there is then thinking about how can we bring this stuff to the classroom. I was actually playing with some students, an escape room in Edmonton with Kern Kelly's high school students, and watching them play just hit me right in the face. I'd never seen high school kids work so hard in their life in an environment to do anything, let alone play and get a lock open. And so was really starting to think about how can we bring this to the classroom. We built a prototype box, kind of like a toolbox with some different locks and things inside, and started testing it. And so we now have a few hundred beta testers, including some of our friends down here at the bottom that we'll introduce, and wanted to get more people to start playing. So it's an open source project. We make and sell a kit at breakoutedu.com, but we also publish what the kit consists of. So you can go to Target or Home Depot and make your own. And then the games that we create are free, but we want to talk with you guys as potential game designers and have you design games. And just like the App Store, if you want to share a game for free, you can share it for free. But if you are particularly passionate about this game and you spent weeks building it, feel free to charge people, like $5 to buy and play your game. So really wanting to take a very open approach and make this a community effort from the beginning. So yeah, with that, I want to quickly introduce the three friends here that are down here at the bottom, and then I see that we have some viewers, so wanting to see if anybody else wants to join us. So Chris, do you want to tell the group who you are? And Chris is one of our game designers, so go ahead, Chris.
Hey, my name is No. You guys hear me okay? Or am I getting some feedback?
You sound good.
Okay, cool. So I am really excited. I'm one of the game designers with Breakout EDU. And my background, besides being a high school English teacher and now a tech coach at Fairhaven School District in New Jersey, I actually ran alternate reality games in my classroom, which are very similar to Breakout games. They're a little bit longer. Mine were a year long, and they were driven by narratives. But my students would solve puzzles and clues that were hidden in their work. And as they did so, they unraveled parts of the story, and by the end of the year, they had to save the world. And so I'm really excited to be part of this project because it gets to bring my passion for education and games and game-based learning together.
Fantastic. So, Jenny, I know you're about to take off. She's literally sitting in an airplane, going to get in trouble. So, I'd love you to introduce yourself to the group and kind of your experience with Breakout so far. I know you got your kit.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name's Jenny McGarrett. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Des Plaines School District 62, formerly with Chicago Public Schools, and I am on a plane right now, headed actually to James out in California. So hopefully we'll land there safe and sound and on time. Actually, on time's not going to happen at this point. But I just got my Breakout kit in the mail, and I'm so excited. I ran down to our tech team and told the 14 of them I was going to lock them in 2 rooms on Wednesday. And actually, as I was talking to them, they said they wanted to challenge each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to go. So we're going to go to one of our schools, and half our tech team's going to take one of the Breakout games and put it in one room, and then the other half's going to grab another game, and then they're going to challenge each other to see who can get out of each room faster. And then after that, they're going to lock all of our district principals in the room the week after that. So I'm really excited about it's my 4th day on the job at this district, and I'm already locking up all of our employees. So I don't know. Either this is going to be a great success, or we can add it to James's resume of failure. I'll just blame it on you, James.
So Dan Rizek, also from Illinois, I wanted to kind of hear about your experience with the escape room and what gets you excited about the project.
Sure. I'm Daniel Rizak, Director of Academic Technology at PerQuest Academy in Palatine, Illinois. I taught science, and now I'm also the STEAM coordinator for Quest. So when I heard James and I heard about this breakout concept, I fell in love with it. I love the idea. I've played these kind of games, like the iPad and stuff. I had not experienced a physical breakout game until ISTE just last week, where we went to Escape the Room Philly. And well, I shouldn't say that. I did it at the Google App Summit a couple weeks ago. But it's addictive, and when you get a group of people in this room, it is kind of like the epitome of inquiry. And for somebody like me who does a lot of problem-based learning, the ideas afterwards that I brought a colleague to the last game. We couldn't stop talking about it. All the different applications, especially for a STEAM teacher who, we do, coding and 3D printing and design work with students. A lot of different ideas for applications for how to get kids to build solutions to get yourself out of the room. But I'm very excited for Breakout EDU.
Fantastic. So thank you, guys. I think so. The purpose of this call and Hangout is to really talk about the game designer aspect. Dan really hit the nail on the head when he says that, the applications or possibilities are endless, but it's also kind of restricted to what you guys develop and what you guys put together. So at the end of the day, we have a very simple set of materials. I'm going to share my screen and kind of show you what we have here. So I'm going to go to breakoutedu.com. And the first one I'm going to look at is /kit. So let me share my screen. Hopefully it's the right one here. Let me try it one more time. All right, so what we have here is the kits. Like I mentioned before, you can purchase it from us, but this Amazon list is probably a better thing to show you. And these are very generic pieces of hardware. So we have 4 different locks. We have a key lock, a word lock, a number lock, and a directional lock. We have a small pencil box, which is open with a 3-digit code, a flash drive, an invisible ink marker that can be shown or revealed when you shine a black light on it. This tool here in red is called the HASP, or the lockout code out. I forgot the name of it, but it's actually an industrial tool that companies use when people are working on heavy machinery. You want to make sure that everybody is safe, so each person working on the machine places a lock on it. So it's kind of a basic tool that allows you to put multiple locks on a single lock. That way, if somebody, mechanic is working on the machine, they can't unlock it and start the machine up until every person is out of the machine and is taken off their lock. We use it, though, as it allows you to expand a game. So it has a single box, and you put this red hasp on it, and then you put up to 6 different locks on it. And so you could have multiple teams trying to get a lock open. And then the final thing is the big toolbox here. So we have a breakout box. And so the only difference if you get it from us is we get a nice handmade box that's made currently in Mark Hammond's garage. But a generic toolbox works just as well. So those are the pieces that we're working with. And we want to encourage game designers to build games that work with those materials. However, we also want to, open up the opportunity for people to design games that require additional hardware. So imagine you're designing a game about Benjamin Franklin. It's a historical lesson using some of the generic materials, but it might be really cool if you have some sort of like magical glasses or eyeglasses you put on so that you can see things a little bit differently. That Benjamin Franklin designed some glasses that allow you to do that. Or you're working in some sort of, like this, for example, design a game where the students have to build a motor. So it's very much hands-on. The students are creating, and so we, allow him to add those different materials. So let me just show you his game for example. So I'm going to go to breakoutedu.com/games. All the games right now are password protected, but the password is just show your work, one word. So show your work, one word. So let me show you kind of how this works here. Let me click on the game site and share it. And then all the games are here. So here's Chris's game, The Mad Engineer. I click play and see if I can type in the password successfully, show your work. And then if you scroll down, you can see that, you know, you describe the game, here's the story, and then each game designer is required to create a YouTube video explaining how it works. So you can watch the video, and Chris goes through and talks about how he sets it up in his classroom and all the different pieces that are required. And then down below are the materials. So here are the additional items. So like you need copper wire, a small lockbox, and a battery, and then the breakout items that are required to play this game. Anytime we have an additional item like this, and this is the only game right now that has it, these are linked to Amazon. So when that link's broken, I need to fix that, where you can buy that piece. So here are the types of magnets that you can buy, and they're really cheap magnets. Here's the copper wire that you can get to be able to do that game. But so that's just how games are represented on the site. But we want to encourage people to just design games, you know, for their own classrooms and not necessarily putting them on the site. And so what we have here is at breakoutedu.com/create have started putting together some resources. So it's the Google template, or the game template's either a PDF if you want to print it out, or a Google Doc. Let me open up the PDF so you can just see what it's like here. And then all of the elements of creating a game. So a good game has a story. And so, for example, in the game that I designed is called Dr. Johnson, and the players are trying to prevent the zombie apocalypse that the mad scientist Dr. Johnson has designed. And so you have to get into this box that it has the antidote inside. So kind of a very basic story. Some of them are a little bit more complex. Mark Hammond's designed a game that's based on Alan Turing's life, and you're trying to win World War II, and you're decoding codes that are coming from the enemies, or messages that are coming from the enemies, and it's a lot of fun. But good games have a story. But then down here, you know, you have to think about the flow of the game. You know, what are the puzzles that the players are going to have to solve? So, you know, you think about the items that you have, but for example, here it says players are going to find a small box, and you need to enter the code 729 to open it. And then you have to say, okay, how will they learn that? And so kind of understanding the logic of the game. And one of the key aspects is making sure that players have to go in order. You know, so for example, you don't want them to be able to kind of stumble upon puzzle number 6 and make it so that they can just skip 1 through 5. And so you got to ask yourself, how am I going to hide stuff or lock stuff so that there's kind of a general flow that all players will go through? And then down below, we describe in detail all of the kit items, so you kind of know what you're developing. But because you're limited to a box and kind of the materials that you have in your classroom or your workspace, we want to encourage you to use the internet at some point. You know, that allows you to expand it to multiple players, because you can really do anything on the web, whether it's a Google form that's password protected, or they stumble upon a video, a YouTube video, or a website. You know, so for example, when designing Dr. Johnson, the players get this note, and the note kind of has a URL in there. They figure out that it's a URL, and then they go to Dr. Johnson's website, and I just used a free Google site and posted all of these weird things that I found on the internet. But what the players need to do or figure out eventually is that there's a little link that I've hidden inside the Statue of Liberty's eyes. So if you click on her eyes, it goes to this Google map, and then on the Google map was a custom My Maps thing. It's a free tool called Google My Maps. I've embedded different clues based on colors into the map here. And so though we are limited by the box, when you think about things on the internet, it really opens up the possibilities of different things that you can do. So I wanted to try to figure out how to open it up. I see there's quite a few viewers for a Q&A or getting some way to ask questions, but I don't know the best way to do it. So I think maybe back to that event page where we you signed up to GUM, I think you can post comments. So I think it's just bit.ly/Breakout EDU. Or you can email me if you know my email address, james@breakoutedu.com, Breakout EDU. It'll take you, there's like a place where you can post comments or questions. But yeah, that's really it. So Chris, can you talk about kind of your experience when you're designing a game?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, like I said, I've been designing games in a classroom setting for about 2.5 years, 3 years. And I mean, maybe the best thing to tell you some of the tips I learned when it comes to designing games. And the first would be that you will never make a game that is one size fits all. So when I'm designing my games, I have a specific kind of user in mind. Whether it's a middle school class that's kind of like STEMmy, or whether it's an English class for a high school that's exploring Edgar Allan Poe, you want to have your games kind of be thematically meant for someone. And that's always been my experience. The other thing that I think I've learned over the years of making these types of puzzles is don't underestimate your audience. There were times where I was making clues and puzzles for my kids in the class, and they were just going, they were going through them as fast as, I could come up with them. And so, if you embark on this quest of making these games, always kind of make them harder than you think. I also think that kind of makes for a more fun game. If you have 45 minutes to break out of this room and you make it too easy and the game's over in 15 minutes, well, the audience is kind of disappointed. You would be surprised when it comes to these kind of breakouts of puzzles. The user doesn't really mind failing. It gives them the opportunity to discuss and talk about it, and then they can set the game up again and play. And that's also what I really think is kind of cool about the way James has set this up, is we have the ability to expand infinitely outside of the box on the internet, but also, I'm still in the classroom and I have an innovation lab and I plan on using this in my classroom. And what's fun is I can modify and play around with what other people are creating and embed that into my classroom in a way that fits the needs for my kids. Even today I was actually drawing up curriculum and standards about how a game I'm working on now and a couple games that are already in there actually fit within my curriculum. So, going forward, it's something I actually plan on putting in my lesson plans, and, we might have a Breakout EDU, maybe once or twice, a month or something like that, maybe as a reward, or maybe, to reinforce something I teach in class, because, we have this kind of fact-based curriculum. I could send my kids out to the internet to go learn about Edgar Allan Poe, or I could develop this game that takes those same facts but also embeds it in this team-building, exciting narrative that not only forces kids to use those soft skills that are so important to develop, but it still also hits on all the things in the curriculum that I as a teacher have to use. So for me, I've always used games in the classroom, and I know a lot of other teachers have used games in the classroom for a long time. To me, this just seems like a really clever, almost natural evolution to the game space, and so as you're making those games, I think that's important to remember is I definitely see a use for this kind of outside as maybe a fundraiser, a team builder. You heard Jenny saying she's using it with staff, but I've been able to come up with some ways where I think I can actually use this in the classroom, and I couldn't imagine a more excited group of users than my own students in my own class. They come to my classroom, I have the door locked, and then I open it, and then right away we're going into the game, and I think that's something for the kids to look forward to. So that's just kind of where I'm at, and thinking about not only as a game designer what I'm working on, but also as a game user, which will actually be in the classroom.
So Dan, I'm going to ask you next about the makerspace and what you're thinking about there. But one of the points I wanted to make before that Chris brought up are twofold. One is making games hard for your students, and it's okay to fail. And one of the things that I think is super important about the breakout games is these things called hint cards. So the hint cards, there's 2 that come in every kit, and then there's a link to this PDF if you make your own kit. The hint cards are important because that allows your students to work until their own frustration point and then ask for help. As educators, we oftentimes intervene before we should. We should let our students get to that point and try and try and try again until they're frustrated or ready for help. And the nice thing is they have those hint cards that they can just hand it to you and say, okay, we need a help, we need a hint. But it's structured. It's not like you're sitting there saying, well, why don't you try 7-2 something, and then you're giving them too much. So you let them struggle with the clues or the puzzles that you've done, and then they ask for help. And then the second thing that Chris mentioned is, and that's one of the big purposes of this Hangout is designing games for the classroom. Right now, most of our games and the ones that people are designing are great for groups of like 5 to 12. But this summer, I really want to turn our focus to how do we design games that can accommodate 20 to 30, because that's our classrooms. And if this doesn't work for classrooms of 30, it's just always going to be kind of like a nice little fun hobby that we do outside of class. And so that's where that red hasp comes in and the internet comes in. So you can probably imagine where teams naturally working on a separate lock, and once all 4 teams have gotten off their respective blocks, the box opens. Then you're left with some smaller box inside, but then having it be the answer to whatever it is, the combination, the 729 or whatever the numbers or words are, be a result of multiple people's work. So imagine a math game where the final combination to open the box is like the correct answers on these 4 different complex math scenarios that everybody's had to solve, and then they add those 4 numbers together, and it opens up the box. And the box doesn't open, they're like, oh no, somebody's work in these 4 different areas is wrong, let's go back and try to figure it out. And you're creating a very authentic, engaging way to basically do something that historically you taught in a worksheet, and the students got right or wrong and gave them a 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. How can we use gaming in a meaningful way? And the second, so yeah, I'll stop it there, because when Dan first played at the Illinois Game Summit, he brought up the concept of, kind of the maker space in the building and the creating, and I want to kind of hear more about what you're thinking there.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm obviously applying this to the students that I see, every day, and we have Chris, you have an idea lab. We have an idea lab too. We have a makerspace, and one of the things I see immediately was this idea of like where to add your mystery, and our kids are learning code. They're learning PHP. They're learning HTML, and there's this. I immediately see this possibility of creating hiding your mystery within code, so that kids go to the web and then they have to start basically breaking down pieces of the web and unlocking the mystery there. I envisioned the possibility of students having to print out using a laser cutter or a 3D printer pieces of a puzzle that, when they all come together, tell part of that story where they have to unlock that box. We do have a laser cutter, and I can imagine like maybe there's some sort of being able to print out a key or something like that. But there's a lot of possibilities there with a lot of these tools that I have available to me. Just a lot of even the free stuff that's available using something like X-ray goggles. That's a web maker tool. Being able to unlock pieces of the web where you can see code that hidden code on websites. But I'm definitely, one of the things, I'm obviously looking at it in my middle school students. My colleague who I brought to ISTE, he's looking at it from a lower school standpoint, and how can we get these first and second graders interested in unlocking this and getting out of the room. So he's kind of diving into that, and I'm also looking into, I think we're going to be doing we're definitely going to be doing this for our teacher in-service when they all come back to school. And that'll be about 40 or 50 people, so we're hoping to accommodate a large group at that point. But just so many possibilities when it comes to, and it's Chris, I see you nodding your head there, of where we can integrate these things. And the one thing I did want to mention too is I see, probably because I'm biased with a lot of the games I've played before, as an opportunity for a game developer to create mythology out of this, to tell a story. One game can be just one chapter in many different games that kind of, lead to the next one when it comes out. So lots of opportunity, lots of different possibilities with something like this.
Yeah, and Dan, I just want to jump in real quick. That's really exciting for me because everything you just mentioned is kind of what's going on in some of my next games. I'm actually working on a game right now. So, like you, I'm in a makerspace idea lab, and I really believe one thing that's missing from makerspaces is kind of like making with a purpose. So, a few of my games I'm working on right now are going to involve, printing something out with a 3D printer or cutting something with a laser cutter concurrently while solving other puzzles and hoping that's done, all at
There's
that
a
last.
timing.
Yeah.
There's a little
And,
bit of time to work
and
on.
my mad engineer games all kind of revolve around one overarching story of this mad engineer who's out to challenge, in my mind, kind of like middle school students, to have them prove that they have, these STEM skills to get the job done. So he's kind of like challenging them. So yeah, I mean, everything you said is fantastic. It makes me happy because that's kind of where I'm at. And the game I built involved having that simple motor that they had to construct. So I'm kind of blending that STEM lab hands-on stuff and tying that in with, some of the stuff you find on the internet. So yeah, that's really neat, man. I'm happy to hear you say that.
Want to address two things, and then I want to invite Wes to share what he's thinking because he posted something in the chat, so I pulled him in. So the first one is getting other people to try your game. That's probably the biggest challenge in technical writing, and encourage you to have students design games as well to have that same experience. But there's this moment where you go through all the steps, you design this game, and it works in your head, and you can facilitate it. But the real challenge is then hand over all of that to somebody else and say, play this game. And it's really hard to sit there and be like, no. So then it forces you to be very clear and succinct in how you describe yourself in your instructions and write very clean instructions, and how in your video you showcase how to do it. And it's, even that skill as a professional becomes super valuable to replicate in a lot of the world that we live in today, is this technical writing stuff that often is like the ignored standard or the ignored topic in schools because it's just so hard, where if you want to teach it, why not teach them through designing a game? I think we use, like, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich example here in the U.S. a lot to explain technical writing, but why not have it be like the steps in the game? So Wes, in the chat you shared something. So quickly introduce yourself. This is Wes Warner, and what you're thinking.
My name is Wes Warner. I'm from Brisbane, Australia. I work with in high schools. I currently teach game theory design, and also with our Year 11s, we get the kids to create flash-based games for the prep curriculum. But looking at the Breakout EDU model, I can sort of see now, or pivoting, of actually creating an online game where you then they play the game, but in order to complete the game, they have to access, the internet or access the real world. And there was the other thing there, I was thinking, could it actually be taken out into the field? So when students are going out on an excursion, so you play the game in reality and looking at geocaching tools as well and identifying those places in the field.
That's something that I get super excited about, is geocaching was this movement where you go out and find the coordinates of where people have hidden objects, but imagine that plus a game, right? Where you are, so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could, if you were looking at taking out students for a 3 or 4 day camp, and it's part of this fact-finding mission to try to find all these parts. I used to do quite a fair bit of road gaining, which is like cross-country orienteering, and you run on these 24-hour trips, and you find as many of these points as possible. But if you start to bring this into a game, you start building game-based education into it. It would I think it has some great possibilities.
One of the things that I'm looking to explore in designing games myself is twofold. The first one is I met with the folks at Tinker, and they're starting to create Internet of Things connected items, right? So light switches and stuff like that. But I want to have a lock, and maybe there's one out there that you guys know of me, that a lock that can be programmed open, right? So part of the clue is they arrive at, they open this box, they open it up, and there's a computer there. They log in, and then they have to use Scratch or some sort of coding tool to get the physical lock to open. So they're sitting there and they run the code and it doesn't work. They go back, they check for errors, they run the code again, and finally it opens the lock. Or the other one would be looking at programs like Google Cardboard, where it's kind of like this augmented reality or virtual reality experience where they open the box, there's a Google Cardboard in there, and then they have to like look around, the Palace of Versailles, or they have to visit, the Winchester Mystery House in the form of like a 360 experience and find different clues and then share that information with the with the physical world. And then one last point, there's an educator named Justin Eames in Baltimore who's building his own Oculus Rift world and a game that's compatible with Oculus Rift. So I think, once we've seen enough so far where it's obvious that the breakout concept could be used to, make, a lot of the things that are out there currently more engaging and more immersive and more practical for the classrooms. Whether it's the MakerBots, the cardboards, the geocachings, whatever it is, we can all imagine it, but I think the hardest step then is, aligning it to what's meaningful in the classroom and making it compatible for larger groups. So I'm curious, and that's why we're meeting with you guys and encouraging you all to design and share. And one other thing to note, I don't know if I have a link for it here, but there's a Google group that you get invited to that's open, and message me if you want to get in, where I want people to eventually share their games first, right? Kind of creating this like online community where people are sharing games freely back and forth. Obviously, there's the Breakout EDU game store where you can publish your games and people can download them formally, and I want you to do that. But more importantly, just getting people to share. Like, it doesn't require Breakout EDU to do a lot of these things. Like, go to Target, go to Home Depot, build your kit, and share your games with your friends. We just want to facilitate that learning and sharing through some sort of platform and bring people together. Cool. Is there any other questions? I think, Chris, did you address the one that Pam had in there in the chat?
I think I did. But going back to what you were just saying, James, I am super excited. So I've been teaching myself Raspberry Pi lately, and I'm really excited about the possibility of that digital to physical world connection that you were just talking about. I've been kind of playing around with the idea of when you open that breakout box, having a countdown kind of timer start via Raspberry Pi, and also whether it has to get teamed up with an Arduino, I think there's a way that we could turn a physical lock coded by a Raspberry Pi. And so I'm really excited about those options, and I've been playing around with that a lot too. But as far as, I think I've answered every question that I've seen. So
Trish mentioned that there's a Minecraft connection. Yeah, so Chris Scott here in California is starting to think about Minecraft games as well, and it'd be so much fun. And that's where I think that the really important piece, if I had to emphasize anything today, is blending the physical with the virtual. Don't focus on games that are just, the replication of some sort of online video. Get your students or players moving around, discovering it, because there's something unique about physically moving to somewhere, opening a lock, getting the next clue or challenge, and moving somewhere else. What we're trying to do here is not, create a community video game developers. This is something different. This is, an immersive experience. So as much as possible, getting them working that way. And I think Lane in there shared that he'd done a game with Google Maps as well, kind of like just thinking about how to take what you're doing in class normally, whether it's a novel study, and like Dan was sharing, it's like the characters, the novel could be playing roles. I think it was or Chris or somebody was sharing the mythology. I think it was Dan. So having like the mythology play a part or the characters be recurring. The game that I just designed for the event here in Palo Alto is based on Vint Cerf and the history of communication. You start learning about knots, like kind of how people communicated using knots, and then Morse code, and then obviously Vint Cerf is one of the founders of the internet, and you get to the internet and you kind of go through that whole, learn about the history of digital communication or communication through the game, but it's wrapped up in a story, based on Vint Cerf. So you kind of like teaching and playing around with stuff at the same time. Cool. Any other comments or questions? I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but I could talk about this stuff for forever. Cool. So we'll call it there. I'm gonna post this to the blog, and one of the things I shared on the website is posting new games online every week. At this point, it's we're a very small, very small shop of volunteers that are putting this together. So I encourage you, get games and share them. They're your game, and you can make them free like our games, or you can charge for them as kind of like the App Store model, or what have you. So I'm really excited, and it's so awesome to see viewers, and we'll see what we do and do from here. So any final thoughts or comments from the panel here?
I'm just really, excited about the opportunities. I think this is something pretty clever, and it's a nice way to blend a lot of what people are excited about in education, whether it's maker spaces or STEM, whether it's soft skills, whether it's making curriculum excited at the student-centered classroom. I think this is really, neat.
I think it's really important that we're doing things in a physical world too, though. One of the things I think for the last few years, I've felt like me personally as an educator have been staring at a screen a lot, and I'm happy and excited to get people in a room moving around, picking up objects, solving puzzles, using their hands, building things, and this is just what I need at this moment. So.
All right, Wes, you have the final word if you're still there. It looks like you're frozen.
Yeah. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I think the idea of getting away from it is a great idea. It just gave me another idea. We've been doing chickens and Egyptian burial and things like that. We would bury the chickens in the school, and they dig up archaeological dig later on. But I could sort of see now if we even embed this as clues as to where they were buried and things like that. It's just fantastic ideas.
So much fun. So let's stay in touch. I'll probably do another one of these in a couple weeks. But let's just keep the community going and sharing, and we will be talking to you all soon. So thank you guys so much, and have a great evening and weekend.
Take care, James. Thanks again.
See you.